Today on Global Value Creators, we are delighted to welcome our friend Eymeric Segard, co-founder and CEO of LunaJets, one of the largest private jet operators in Europe. After foregoing a successful advertising career in favor of uncharted entrepreneurship in the skies, Eymeric dedicated his life to building a modern aviation platform, the first component of which is a NetJets-like service, but with more flexibility and at a lower price. In an industry where many competitors have fallen, Eymeric and LunaJets continue to fly high. We hope you enjoy. Thanks, Eymeric, for taking the time to join us today. We really appreciate it. We always like to start from the beginning. So maybe you could start with your childhood. I understand you moved around the country quite a bit, and it'd be great to hear the story from the beginning.
Yes, thank you, Evan. Thank you for having me. Great to talk to you. Yes, I did move around the world, not just the country. Let's start from the beginning. I was born in the north of France. At the time, when was it? Late 60s, when in the north of France was at the time a very prosperous industrial region for France. Lots of coal, lots of steel, and the textile industries were based there. My father was in textile, and so I grew in the family, normal family, if you want, except that my mother is not, at the time, was not normal because she's from Colombia. So she went to university in Paris and met my father and never went back to Colombia and married and stayed there. So I grew up in France. In the 80s, what happened, as you know, with the petrol crisis and the hyperinflation, my father's company, my father's family company in textile went bust. Because they didn't foresee the changes in the textile industry, which were mostly the new textures and the arrival of China and Asia and their factories at very low cost. So the company went bust. So what I remember from the first 12 years, I think, was a very comfortable childhood, and then all of a sudden a big change, and it wasn't as comfortable anymore. So I think what I retain from those days is a cautious view on money. Money may be here tomorrow, but may not be there. May be here today, but may not be there. May disappear tomorrow. And I think that lesson has kept with me throughout and still today.
No, that's great. And then how did you make the leap from there to Brown and Merrill Lynch? Maybe you could just talk about the next stage of your life.
Yeah. So not only did the family business go bust, but then my parents divorced. So they sent me, while they were unraveling all that, I was in boarding school in the UK. And then my mother, after the divorce, went back to Colombia eventually and had custody of my brother and I. So I did my high school in Colombia. I finished at 17 years and 2 months. So it was a bit young to go to university. So in the meantime, my father had moved to Brazil. So I went to do another senior year of high school in Brazil. And from there, I applied to Brown because I was in the American school in Brazil, in Rio, and got accepted to Brown. So I was very happy to join that university, which at the time was probably one of the most international universities there was out there, and also a very liberal, what they call liberal education university, because to be honest, I had no idea what I wanted to do. So you could just apply for the general curriculum, and then you had another couple of years to specialize in your master. And when I finished Brown, it was in '89, after the '87 crash, but still finance was the hot place to be and where you could make money. So I applied to Merrill Lynch, who said, well, we like you, but you don't have a green card, so we can't hire you in the States. And I said, okay, I'll go to London, and ended up with them in London. Worked there for a couple of years. It was interesting because again, I learned a lot. I passed the stock exchange exams, and it was at the time when the private banking sector was expanding and growing more mainstream, if you want. So I was in the new department for private banking and servicing, attending clients and helping them in their financial decision. So that was pretty interesting. While in London, the French, I have a French passport, so the French army got hold of me and mandated basically that I had to go back to France to do my military service. It's not obligatory anymore, but at the time it was. So I had to quit Merrill, went back to France, and I didn't want to do the military service. I thought it was a waste of time, but since I was there, since I had to do it, I said, well, I might as well do the best I can and try and get something out of it. So I did pretty well, and after the first 3 months, the training course, I was able to choose where I could continue. And I chose to go in the medical field because I always wanted to be a doctor, and this was an easy way in. So I did an extra month of training as a medic / paramedic, and finished the last 8 months in the ER room of a military hospital in Paris. So interesting, a new perspective on life. I know how to do stitches and bandages. But as soon as that was finished, I went back to London. I liked the Anglo-Saxon business style, and thought London was a nice place to be when you were 21, 22, single, and wanting to have fun. So that's where I went back.
No, that's great. And then then maybe we can move on to your long, distinguished career in the marketing industry. I think you were with WPP for 15 years or so. And I was curious maybe what the most important thing you learned from all those years in the marketing industry.
Yeah, so I went back and Merrill Lynch wanted, had the job still opening for me, still available, but I like the client service aspect of the private banking, but I didn't like the product. It wasn't, the finance and the bonds and the swaps. It was a bit too financially oriented, and I wanted something more creative. So I applied in marketing, and ended up with in the WPP group in an agency called Ogilvy, which was great. I had a very good time. I did 10 years in that particular agency. What I learned the most, what was most exciting really was the ability to work, to deep dive into client businesses and business models, with the objective of helping to do their marketing campaigns and their advertising campaigns. So in a very, in this over 2 or 3 years that you would spend with every client, you had a really good induction into their product, their services, their business model, the margins, the factories and stuff like that. And you could really get a good look into those business models. And so, that as far as a sort of business study case was very, very useful. And really the role of the agencies is to add value to what the client can do, and what the client's objectives are. So again, it was client service, adding value to the client. That's what I always like to do. But I always, wanted in the back of my head to be an entrepreneur and to develop something. But those years in advertising were really good as far as the business education.
Well, that's a perfect pivot point, I think, to get into LunaJets here. Maybe you could tell us where the idea from LunaJets originally came from. You obviously mentioned your background in client service, and I was hoping to specifically zero in the moment that you decided to leave the advertising industry and totally change careers into private aviation.
Yeah. Well, really interesting, and it was really a stroke of luck, destiny, as you would call it. What's important is to know is that I had never flown in a private jet before I started LunaJets. I had the basic knowledge of seeing high net worth individuals in the press getting on and off private jets, but that's it. How did it come about? the last 4 years at Ogilvy, they had sent me to Mexico to run their healthcare agency over there. So every year I would go back to Europe to see my friends. And in July 2007, I went back and met my childhood friend, who was living in London at the time, and with whom I was discussing. And he's in finance. He's an investor. And basically, we were discussing holidays. I had very little holiday, and I had to go and see all my friends and all my family across Europe during the month of July, during those 2 weeks. So I asked him, what are you doing? And he said, well, I'm going, I'm taking a private jet to go to my summer villa. And I said, well, that's pretty interesting because I need to, fly around as well. And I asked him how much it cost, and he told the price. And I was a bit surprised, obviously, because it was very expensive and I had no idea. And then he thought, he had to justify himself. So he said, well, actually, the price is 50% because the plane has to take me. So that's what I'm paying. But the plane has to come back. So that's why it's so much. And then I said to him, well, hold on a minute. Are you saying you're paying for an empty plane to fly back to London after having dropped you off? And he said, yes. And together we kind of said, well, wouldn't there be somebody over there who can jump on the plane, pay peanuts, and fly back to London because the plane is already flying anyway. And he thought that was a good idea, and so did I. And so we went on the internet to see, who was doing this and how it worked. And the first thing we discovered is that those flights are called empty legs. Okay, we had no idea. And the second thing we found out is that nobody was doing them. So, with my marketing mind, I said, well, I can easily see a website where we have lots of empty legs and people just go in and click and book and fly. And he said, yes, great idea. So I went back to Mexico during the fall. I did I think it was 150-page business plan that I showed to him. And he said, fine, I'm in. And I said, well, me too. I saw that as a great adventure. And I resigned WPP. I packed my wife and my 2 kids, and we flew back to Europe to start the adventure. I ended up in Geneva, in Switzerland. Why? Because there's 3 main hubs in Europe for private jets: London, Paris, and Switzerland. London, I had already lived, and I wanted a new adventure. Paris was very difficult for startups and for business startups in general. And Switzerland was very open, very easy to launch a new company, very friendly as far as business administration and red tape. So I ended up here, and that's how it started. So big change.
Yeah, it's a very cool story. Maybe before we get more into Luna, we could just take a step back and you could just give us a sort of overview of the private jet industry in Europe. You mentioned the 3 big cities, but we understand it's quite a bit less mature than the US market. So maybe you could just quickly describe the landscape that you're operating in.
Yeah, so the private jet industry in Europe, what you have to know about the private jet industry is that it's private, and it's very difficult to get data because people keep everything confidential. What we do know is that the US is obviously the biggest market, probably 50-60% of the world's jets are based there. And I would say 25-30% in Europe, and then the rest in the rest of the world. It's a market that is not as saturated as the US. The planes are more modern. Okay, in the US, you can easily charter an aircraft from the 80s or even the 90s. In Europe, anything older than 12, 15 years is difficult to charter to clients by perception of security. Okay, I repeat, it's only a perception, but that's what counts, and that's why the market is works on much newer fleet here. It's also much more expensive. Salaries and fuel and maintenance is more expensive in Europe. So it's a big difference with the US. And importantly, what's great about the US is the amount of airports there are. Okay, there's an airport every highway exit almost. Whilst in Europe the land is much scarcer, so there are very few airports. That means that a lot of aircraft are concentrated in very few airports, and that causes a lot of problems as far as air traffic and slots, landing slots and departure slots. That problem you don't have in the US. So those are the big difference, and we've adapted to it in Europe. We are, we're now a leading company here in the charter market, and it works fine with us.
And it's hard to say your exact market share. Is that correct? Because there's not enough data. But you're definitely one of the largest. Is that right?
It's hard to say. The latest estimates of the market value of the business is about $24 billion. But that's the overall business jet market, so sales and services, purchase and services. One big competitor of ours, who probably monitors the market much more than everybody else, once estimated to a client who then reported it to us that we had about a 10-12% market share in Europe. That's as close as we can get.
Still a long way to go. I was hoping to talk a little bit about what you may have learned from one of your competitors, and without naming names, I was wondering what you can learn from the difficulties experienced by the very large owner-operator owned by an extremely famous investor.
Yes, well, I think we're going to have to name names because it's a great company, and actually NetJets was a key influencer in how we started the company, because my friend my investor with whom I started the company was at the time a NetJets client, and so although I had never flown in a private jet, he had flown in a few. And so he understood what the value of private jets is and the service that is expected on private jets, which is quite different from any other industry because it's really a luxury and high-end service. So the NetJets, it's a great product, and we always tried since the beginning. We tried to replicate the service from NetJets, but at a much lower cost initially by using the empty leg. But it's always been, if you want, the reference point. So NetJets is a great product. Berkshire Hathaway is behind it, so they have a lot of trust and deep pockets. The problem that we hear from our clients, who some of them were NetJets clients and come to us, or some of them still are NetJets clients and use us according to the best options that they need, is that it's expensive, we know that, but it's a great service, so that goes together. But it's also the lack of flexibility. And if you want, in the one of the main advantages of private jets is the flexibility that it should convey and give to the users. They have minimum notices that are that block certain clients from wanting to fly at the last minute. You buy a share or a card in one model of aircraft, one size, but that size may not be the right size for all your flights. So then, of course, they allow you to upgrade or downgrade, but then the ratios of invoicing are not really in your favor, so it costs even less. And really, what NetJets is, it's they don't really make money in the day-to-day running of operation of the private jets. The business model and where it does make money is really in the buying and the selling of the aircraft. So it's a business. It's a dealership business basically, where they go to an OEM, an original manufacturer, original equipment manufacturer, Bombardier, Gulfstream, and etc. And they will buy, a quantity of aircraft, 50, 100, at a very big discount because of the volume, which then they resell as a fraction at the market price and a bit more. And then after 5 years, they get the planes back and they sell them again. And that's where they make the money. It's in the buying and the selling, not so much in the daily operation. So we see them as a big company, like a Hilton hotel, very nice. You know what you get, very good quality, but not very flexible. We are more of a boutique hotel. We adapt to the client. We will fight for the client and find the solutions that they need out there in the market.
Yeah, we're going to talk much more about client service in just a bit, I hope. I was wondering, to sort of get back to the timeline. Back in the early years, you started, I think, in May 2008, obviously, right, going into the financial crisis, which I can imagine was extremely difficult, to say the least. I was wondering, maybe you could just talk about that time. Did you ever think that you guys weren't going to make it, particularly right in the middle of the storm there?
Ooh, yes. I think there were, there were lots of nights that we thought we weren't going to make it, but I can remember two in particular. So just to recap, the business model initially was to have a website, and that would consolidate empty legs initially in Europe from all the different operators out there, and people would just go in and buy. The target at the time, and that's the business model that we raised. We didn't raise a lot of money at the time. It was self-funded, so it was still $2 million, I think, between my investor and I. And actually we were pretty lucky, because if we wanted to replicate that business model today, we would be more in the 20 to 30 million investment needed to do. The market has really evolved since. A. B, nobody was doing empty legs at the time, so there was a gap in the market, and therefore it was much cheaper. Now the idea has gone mainstream almost, so it's more difficult to differentiate. So the business model was to resell these empty legs. And the target, marketing-wise, the target market was really people flying business or first class, and telling them, hey, you can pay a bit more, but you have a private jet, okay, with all the advantages of private jets, privacy, confidential, you fly when you want, where you want, etc., etc. So really it was what I called an upgrading business model. So we were trying to upgrade people to business class, to private jet, sorry. So two instances where we really thought we weren't going to make it. The first one was just a month before we launched. So I actually launched, I think it was 22nd of May 2008. And end of April 2008, I arrive in the office, and I look at Google, and I see a news that a new company called Virgin Charter had just launched in the US with an interview on CNBC with exactly the same model of reselling empty legs. And Virgin Charter, no surprise, was obviously a company by Sir Richard, Mr. Branson, who was funding it with an ex private jet guy, Scott Duffy, I think it was called, and they decided to launch. So, in a way, that was, you could say it was a good news, because empty leg business model did not exist at the time, and all of a sudden, Richard Branson goes in it. So you say, okay. I must not be that crazy. But then the flip of the coin is, oh, damn, Richard Branson is on it as well. And his pockets are much more deeper than me. So we're going to have a big issue here. The luck, and if you want, was that they were starting in California. So we said, okay, by the time they cross to the East Coast, and by the time they cross the pond, maybe I'll have a bit of momentum here in Europe to have some sort of business going and be able to survive. But that was a scare a month before launching. Then we launched, and 3 months later, so June, July, August, end of August, you had the bankruptcy of Lehman Brothers and the start of the financial crisis that we all know too well. So obviously, second instance of, oh my God, what have I done? I quit a nice, comfortable VP position at WPP. I moved all the way, and my container hadn't arrived. It was still on a boat somewhere in the Atlantic. And I moved all the way to Geneva to start this company. I invested money, and now nobody has money to spend, because basically the first class passengers were downgraded by the companies and by themselves to economy. Business class passengers took the train, and the economy passengers just stopped traveling. So all my upgrading target, completely disappeared. So, I still had a good idea, a good business model, but nobody to sell it to. So we kind of panicked, and that panic lasted a bit longer. I think it was about a week. And then eventually the phone rang. And, I was like, oh, so it still works. And I picked up, and it was this person who said, hey, I'm looking for an empty leg from A to B. And I looked, and bad luck. There was no empty legs. I said, sorry, there are no empty legs that day for your itinerary. And the guy said, okay, well, I'll call my operator, and I'll get a flight. And immediately I said, well, hold on a minute. I have this agreement with over 60 operators throughout Europe. So, why don't I do a little search for you, and I find the best options rather than you calling directly the operator, which was, before we launched, the private jet business was really an operator business. People would call directly the operator and get a quote on the fleet that the operator was managing. And if he was a bit unsure, he would call, a second or a third operator. I had, by the time, deals with 60 operators to sell their empty legs. So I started calling them, and, electronically, I started contacting them and said, hey, I'm looking for this flight. I know you don't have an empty leg because I have all your empty legs on file, but basically what can you do on what we call a regular charter, an ad hoc charter? And they started getting options, and I presented these options to the client, and he said, yes, well, that's better than what my operator is giving me, so I'll book through you. And that's how the main ad hoc and the main business today for LunaJet works. It's really a charter market. The empty leg market, unfortunately, the empty leg as a product does not work. It's ironic, but if I had been in the industry and wanting to launch LunaJets, I would have known that empty legs did not work, so I wouldn't have done it. But because I was not in the industry, I went in and I looked from the outside, and I said, it sounds like a good idea. So we went in and we did it. But eventually we found out it didn't work. It's not sustainable, basically because the empty leg depends on the first flight. And if the first flight changes, then your empty leg has to change or has to be canceled. And when people fly, it's they want they want luxury, yes, but they want certainty. They want to know that they're going to be able to fly from A to B. And if it's a business person, time is also very important. So the charters basically is where we make most of our business. And of course, we still look for empty legs once in a while, and we do find them for the clients, and it's a bonus. But now we really become expert in the charter market.
It's amazing. The whole business model basically changed, I guess, in some ways with the first client telling you what they wanted.
Yeah, exactly. Yes, it did. It's, I think some Harvard Business School professors wrote a book called The Plan B and said that, most of the startups that actually make it don't make it on their Plan A business model, but actually are the ones that can adapt to the industry and succeed on a Plan B. And that's exactly what we did. And that worked. And basically, just to finish the story, where this person came from was very interesting, because I told you I didn't have any more clients. I didn't have any more target to upgrade. And this person was actually what I call now a downgradер. So he was already a business jet user who, with the crisis, with the financial crisis, realized that, it's affecting everybody, and it's also affecting the high net worth individuals. And he was looking for the possibility to fly private at a better price, and at the time on Google, we were the only one advertising fly private for less, or fly private for cheaper. And that's what he typed in Google, and that's how he came to me. And so, so with this charter market, we completely changed the marketing strategy. We even changed the look of the website, because we went from an upgrading service to a downgrading service. And to be honest, it is much easier to sell a product to somebody who knows the product and is used to paying 10 and you're selling it for 5, rather than to somebody who has never flown, but you're telling him, has never used the product, but you're telling him to pay more for something better. He's actually comfortable where he is. He doesn't know you. It's a new product. It's a very hard sell. Whilst downgraders is much easier. You get, it's what you have, what you know, for less. So that worked very well. Two other huge advantages that we had with the financial crisis, and I think that really helped us, is that they, I would say for 2008, so for about 5 years, no other company was going to launch in the private jet business in the midst of the financial crisis. So, and that's why also, we had very little investment at the beginning, but we didn't have to go out and make a huge splash with VC monies and advertising and stuff like that. We really had time to build the product, do our job, do our service. We had no competition for 5 years, even though we had what at the time sounded like a great idea. Before 2013, 2014, where VCs and investors became, really bored of not being able to invest and started coming in again. But that period was very good to us, because we were in no rush and really built a strong product, a great product, and we built from there.
Yeah, it's like a blessing in disguise. The financial crisis gave you the runway to grow before everyone else started coming in. Maybe we could just talk about how that you got the clients that trust you at the beginning. You mentioned that the guy just called you out of the blue, and obviously you mentioned before that safety is such an important thing here. What do you think was in the minds of those first clients when they called that a company had basically never flown flights, and understanding you weren't flying the planes yourself, obviously, but I was just curious what you think they were, what they had in their mind at that point.
Yeah, so the safety is obviously a key, and it's the main variable that we do and that we check and that we don't negotiate on, and we don't compromise. So that's for sure. As you say, we don't manage and fly the planes ourselves. So our role is just as important, but it's also an auditor role, almost, where for every operator that we partner with, we check that they have all the insurance papers and all the certifications. And the certifications are very important. They are given by the local aviation agencies. So the FAA in the States, the CEA in the UK, etc. And they will certify an operator for flying a private jet for commercial purposes. For commercial purposes means that they can charter it out. Like a taxi company needs a license to take on passengers for money. It's the same thing for a private jet. They need a license to charter the jet for commercial purposes. So we check all those documents, and these certifications are the same for a private jet than for American Airlines and British Airways, whatever. It's the same inspectors who check all the different aspects of the company and the safety issues and the maintenance and all those things. So we only use companies that have these certifications for sure. What's also a very important point of reassurance for the clients is that the 90% of the planes that we charter actually belong to an owner. Okay, so when you fly from A to B, actually the flight the day before was probably for the owner to, come back from an important meeting somewhere, and the day after he's going to fly again for another meeting. So you can be sure that his life is the most important things to him, and that he's not going to cut corners as far as safety on his plane. Okay, so you're borrowing somebody else's assets to fly, and usually they take very good care of it because they don't want any issues themselves. It's true that the charter market is unregulated. The barriers of entry are very low, unless you want to do a business and a brand out of it. But otherwise, it's very low. But the aircraft market is the one that's very regulated by the agencies. So to get that certification from the inspectors of the local authorities, it is very difficult and is very restrictive, and there's it's for sure it's a point of reassurance. What you have to remember is, a client who comes to us and who flies private in general is looking for three things. It's safety, confidentiality, and time, saving time. Okay, and that's what we offer, and we will do all the checks, and we will find all the options for him according to his needs. But safety is non-negotiable.
So really, those certifications, they were looking to that, and the fact that you had very reputable owners behind you operating them, gave them the confidence. You mentioned the VCs and how they've gotten in large part into the industry recently, and there's been some big headlines about how some of those VC-backed companies have stumbled quite severely in some cases. I guess if you had to boil it down, what would you say has been the key component to your success so far, competing against those kinds of folks?
That's a big topic. So, VCs were, as I said, starting from 2013, 14, VC started getting interested in the private jet business. First of all, that's an issue we have as well with our with companies that we deal with. Is that as soon as you say private jet, people think that you have a lot of money and the company is huge and we make a lot of money. And so it's kind of hard to negotiate, when we're trying to reduce our costs. But that's not the case. But anyway, the image is private jet equals money, and when there's money, then you can make money. So VCs started becoming interesting on the one side. On the other side, you had some entrepreneurs, let's say, who jumped on the what I call the Uber bandwagon. Okay, and Uber cars had launched and was growing exponentially, and a lot of investors said, "Oh, damn, we missed that train." And then all of a sudden comes some entrepreneurs and they said, "Well, we're going to do the Uber of private jets," and they said, "Oh, great! It's true that the business model is very similar. You open the app, you book a car, and it takes you from A to B, and you pay with your credit card. Thank you very much. Why not on a private jet? You open an app, you book a jet from A to B, you pay with a credit card. Thank you very much." So the analogy is very good with the Uber cars, except that for aviation, it doesn't work. And as much money as they spend and as much money as they raised first, and all of it that they spent, the Uber, the automation of private jet charter has not worked. And we knew that, and we never invested in it. And it has proven us right so far. But you had, companies like SmartJet that lost, I would say, about $150 million in the space of about 5 years, trying to get the brand going, and that didn't work. There's a company in the UK that went bankrupt last year called Victor. They spent about 60 million in 5 years to get going. That didn't work. Other Virgin Charter never made it. Again, the concept of trying to make it automatic doesn't work. There's too many variables. Let it be, as I said earlier, airport slots. You cannot automatize that. Weather conditions, strikes, and basically the flexibility that people are looking. On the private jet, you say, I want to come back, from London once my meeting is over. I don't know when that will be. If the meeting goes well, I'll be at the airport at 3 p.m. If not, I may be there at 9 p.m. So people want that flexibility. On an app, you don't have flexibility. The departure is at that time, and then there's another plane an hour later. So it didn't work. They spent a lot of money on it. We thankfully kept away from it. To your question, why were we different and what makes us successful is, and I mentioned it, the early years when we had no competition, really we had time to build a business. Okay, so it was all about building the business, building the procedures, getting the relationship with the operators, and then we started building the brand and making the brand aware to the target audience. What these companies did, because they got so much easy money, they did the opposite. First, they built the brand and they made noise and they did advertising and events and stuff like that. And then all of a sudden, people said, "Okay, I'm interested." And then they said, "Ooh, then I need to find a product and I need to make it happen." And they were not good on the operational side. They were very good at making noise and making awareness, but not on the operational side because they got the business the wrong way around. That's how I see it. On the one hand, the other aspect is I've already, again, because the money we invested in LunaJets is our own money, and because of my let's say attitude and personality, I've always been very cost conscious. So as opposed to VC money that is spent a bit too easily and leaves the company as soon as it arrives, I control the costs very, very carefully, and all the spend is thought through and negotiated, and our return on investment, ROI, is expected out of every investment, which may not be when it's somebody else's money. So that has proven very good for us.
Eymeric, maybe you could talk a little bit about why the corporate structure and being independent entity from a much larger group gives you the flexibility to serve your customers and everyone else involved in the ecosystem.
Independence for us is key, Evan, because it's two things. It's one, as you say, it's the corporate structure. So we can with one phone call, I can have an annual general meeting with my investor and make immediate decisions. I don't have to report to anybody and prove and justify. It's really fast and we can adapt on the one hand. On the other side, as far as the client service, our independence is even more important because we can really give to the client the best service that fits what he needs. We are not chained to any agreement or any partnership with which we would present an opportunity or an option that would not be the utmost best for the client, but with which we have an interest in, and that doesn't happen here. So it's LunaJets, the client comes first, and we fight for the client, and we don't have any strings that attach us from doing this job. So remaining neutral is for us so important. We've been approached by a couple of times and we've never taken it up because it would have meant losing this neutrality to some higher force. And that's not what LunaJets is about, and that's not why our clients trust us. They know we're neutral. They know they can come here and really get the best options that they're looking for.
And another element, I'm sure, is the culture of the company, which I like to talk about. I know it's very important to you. I think you're even strategically located near EHL. I'm not even going to try to butcher the name, but the hotel school in Luzerne, which is arguably, I think, the finest hospitality school in the world. And I believe you've recruited quite a few of your colleagues from there. Can you describe how you ensure that Luna always maintains an exceptionally high level of service, and how maybe that also leads to your competitive advantage?
Yes, so we're in Geneva. There are various hotel schools around here. EHL is one of the big ones, but there's some others as well. And because I come from the service industry, yes, I've always looked for service people, and I've always defined LunaJet as a service company. I know some of my competitors define themselves as an aviation company because they sell flights, and therefore will go to aviation universities to recruit, aeronautical engineers and very smart people who can explain to you, the difference in pressure when you fly at 33,000 feet, and the difference in thrust in the engines and stuff like that. To me, that's not the first 7 years of LunaJet, I was on the sales floor doing sales myself, and I never had anybody asking me those kind of technical questions. What client ask is, is my flight going to be on time? Will the catering that I requested be there? And did you forget my my red wine and my white wine that goes with the catering? So it's really about service, and that's why I've always hired graduates coming out of hospitality schools for the sales department, for the client service. And we have a very good also engineering schools here, IT engineering, EPFL, one of them, the École Polytechnique in Lausanne, one of the top 10 in IT schools in the world. And I recruit from there for the IT side, which is very important. We talked about the VCs investing a lot of money trying to get the Uber technology. Yes, they did invest a lot in technology. They didn't crack the code. What we do is we invest in technology, but we invest in technology for the client service, not to automatize the whole booking process, which we know that doesn't work. So it's a mixture of hospitality and technology. There's some very good schools in Switzerland that we tap into. And for the hospitality graduates that we hire, I like to hire them straight out of university because they're keen, they're energetic, they're young, and I can train them and shape them just the LunaJets style and with our mentality, which is really all about client service and defending the client's interest in the industry. We're not particularly friends with the operators. Operators, we believe, are our suppliers, and they are there to give us the service that we want. But the client is king, and the client needs to get what he wants or she wants, and that's what we fight for.
How do you make sure that the team, in terms of incentives, is balanced around the idea of profitability and high quality service, right? Because obviously there would be an inclination to drive as much volume as you can at the expense of high level of service. So how do you think about the compensation? How are these folks aligned?
Yes, they have the sales team. I consider them traders. The same way that, in fact, in the trading room, which we call the trading room, there's a big bell, a Swiss cowbell. And
I was going to ask you, I think we've heard it a few times during the conversation.
Exactly. And so when a deal is done, when a client signs a contract and was happy with the options presented and chose one of the options and was reassured by the advisor of his choice, then the bell is rang, just like in a trading floor in a bank back in the days when technology didn't take over. So we still have that. So I consider them traders, and in fact, they have two screens. One of them is the buying screen with the operators. The other one is the CRM screen with the client, and it's all about buying and selling and negotiating. So they do get paid a commission on the flights that they sell to the clients, and the commission is a mixture of business performance as far as volume and value, because it's not about doing one big trade and one big deal and that's it. You need volume and value, and on the other side, feedback from the client. So after each flight, the client receives a questionnaire from myself that he answers. Most of them are answered. It's very pleasant to have, and we work for the client, and they need to be happy, and a rating is given for all the feedbacks with an average at the end of the month, and based on business performance and the feedback, the sales agent will get their commission. They also get a little bit bonus, let's say, for a client retention. So client coming back, which hopefully, if they were happy, it's almost a given, but not always. And a recommendation. That's to me is the key. If a client, especially in the private jet industry, one thing is recommending a restaurant down the road, but the other thing is to recommend something so private, so confidential, and so expensive as a private jet service company. When you recommend it to a client, definitely you're very happy, you're very satisfied, and B, you're quite sure that the company can do the same job for your friend that you're recommending it to. So retention recommendations are very important, and when a client comes recommended by somebody else, the sales agent has done a very good job.
That's great. I think you use some rather contrarian marketing techniques, including buying front page ads in the Financial Times newspaper to win customers, along with buying, obviously, Google ads and and being very high up in those rankings and so on. And now with your infamous dog ads, I think at Geneva Airport and others. So maybe you could just give us a quick overview, and behind you there, yes, maybe you could just talk about your marketing program and how you might think about it differently than some of your competitors.
Yes, it's a very difficult marketing strategy that we have. Why? Because the market is very niche. You hear of niche markets in for various companies, etc. But we're really talking about the famous 1% out there. We're probably talking about the 1% of the 1%. Are the people that we're targeting and we're speaking to. So to find these people is extremely difficult, and mainstream advertising just doesn't work, or creates too much waste. So the strategy is really based on opportunistic deals that we can have. Yes, we have invested in the FT. We believe that for our corporate clients, the FT is still the main or one of the main source of informations that they do read online and offline. So that's the biggest investment we've done is in the FT. It works a lot. It's very popular in the UK, obviously, and the UK is probably 30% of the market in Europe. So it's a good media for us, but nevertheless, to get the 1% of the 1% is always difficult. So we also do advertising in the private terminals at the airport. At least we know that our clients will pass through there through a private terminal. It can't be anybody else. But by the time they get there, it's already too late. They've already booked their flight. So we advertise for the next flight. Hopefully that works, and it has proven to. But yeah, it's difficult, and it's very opportunistic, the strategy we do. I would say 80% maybe is planned up front, and there's a big chunk that is left open and open for opportunities, open for new ideas, and testing, beta testing and A/B testing that we can do on whatever comes up.
I'm assuming that's obviously something that a big, less nimble competitor obviously couldn't do, particularly that 20% move so quickly.
Yes, exactly. So it's the advantage of the startup. It's we're not a startup anymore. We've been around for 13 years, but I like to think that we still have the startup mentality. Okay, and one of the big advantages of a startup mentality is the adaptability and the flexibility that we have. The same way that's what our clients are looking for private jets, but it's a very flat organigram that we have here. The decisions can be taken very quickly. I have my investor on the phone once or twice a day, and decisions can be made very quickly, and really to jump on opportunities like that. Hiring people as well. Sometimes there are no openings, but a very good candidate comes along, and we say, hey, this guy is too good, we cannot let him go. We'll hire him, open a job for him, and see how he goes. And that has proven very, very successul as well for us.
Yeah, I know some of your colleagues are quite young, in fact, and have started right off the bat and have already been promoted up to top the position. So it's more of a startup mentality, as you say, in that regard as well.
Yeah.
Maybe we could talk a little bit about what's going on today. Obviously, we talked about the financial crisis, but there's still a current crisis, the COVID obstacle and crisis for the aviation industry. Maybe you could talk about how you've responded, particularly with the launch of LunaLogistic, and also maybe you could talk about how your view of the permanent or lack thereof of business demand going forward, if we're going to keep zooming or not, if people still want to fly on planes.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, talk about adaptability and flexibility. Good thing we still have this, because that's what was very needed since March. Yeah, so very interesting times. It was, again, a bit of panic at the beginning, but when you look back, and it wasn't too far ago, but it was fun. I enjoyed the period, because it was completely different than the regular, let's call it, day to day. And we were able to do what I like, is to adapt, to get obstacles along the way, and think outside the box, and overcome the obstacles to make it better and to make it stronger for us. So in a nutshell, what happened, when the lockdowns were announced end of March, the last week of March was the best week that we ever had in the 13 years of LunaJets, which is really surprising, given that usually most of the private jet business is done in July and August, as people fly on holidays and fly between holiday spots and stuff like that. That's really, for the private jet industry, the summer, the northern hemisphere summer is Christmas time. But to have the best week ever in March was quite exceptional, and basically it was due to a whole bunch of clients and new clients as well, being at the wrong place at the wrong time, that he wanted to come back home very, very quickly. So in a space of a week, I remember we did 3 flights from Mexico, we did a flight from Colombia, we did Brazil. We had this 19-year-old student that was doing a gap year in some village in Bolivia, building schools and stuff like that. And the father was panicking and bring her home. And the poor girl was not aware of COVID, because information took time to get there. But eventually we had her over, so that was good. We had flights from South Africa. We had flights from East Asia, Hong Kong and Singapore. And then we had Chinese students who were actually studying here in Europe, who needed to go back as well before Europe locked down. So and those are just the long hauls, and then all the short hauls as well, intra-Europe and Morocco and all those places, Turkey. So it was really a busy week. We couldn't believe our luck, but we did very well. And then the luck ran out, if you want. And April was the worst month ever in private aviation. For LunaJets, and actually in private aviation as well. So the phone didn't ring. People were at home finally, and they didn't know what was coming, and nobody flew, and nothing happened. So that was kind of distressful. I had most of my staff at home, and yes, it was all about cutting costs and negotiating and trying to save the boat, which we did very well. And in fact, what happened is one of our loyal clients called us and said, well, can you organize for me a flight from China, because I bought some PPE, protection equipment, personal protection equipment, and I need to bring them back to Europe for my businesses here, for hospitals and stuff like that. And we said, yes, of course. And, we hadn't done much cargo flights before, but we quickly adapted and called all the contacts we had and, built a database of 747s and all those cargo planes that were flying around. And we did this first flight for this client within a week, and it worked well. And he asked for a second flight, and that worked well. And eventually we ended up doing 10 flights during April and May for the cargoes. To Eastern Europe, to Switzerland, to France, to the UK, with PPE equipment on board. And all of a sudden, from the usual, our average ticket on private jet is about $22,000. And here we were talking flights of value between 800,000 to 1.2 million. So the stakes were much higher. We had to put money up front that was an extra risk that we didn't count on, but we had money in the bank, and the flights went well. We got the money back, no problem, and that proved to be a very successful and profitable 2 months, thanks to those cargo flights. And then in June, the situation quieted down, and we kind of realized that it was not the end of the world, and people started flying again. July and August, we didn't have the growth that we anticipated at the beginning of the year, but then again we did, and we almost met the same targets that we had from last year. We're about 80-90%, so that was good. And since September, same thing. We're running at about 90% to 100% of the business of last year versus a year ago, which is extraordinary given the circumstances, which is much more than our competitors are doing. We've had a lot of new clients coming, and I know the press picked up on this a lot. But yes, the people were not willing to share cabins in commercial aircraft with other people, so they came to private jets. And more importantly, I think there were a lot of people whose normal regular flights were not serviced by commercial aviation anymore because they cut so many routes. So now, when you, instead of flying 1 hour on the direct commercial airline that you had, or maybe a 2-hour flight, you actually had to go to a hub, make a connection, change planes, probably lose the plane, and meet, and have all these other touch points at the airport and in the different cabins. And so people came to private jets. We've seen some of the new clients come back. So they've liked it and they've come back, and maybe they're still scared of COVID. So they're still with us, and we hope to keep them for a long time. So very interesting, but very good, very flexible. This cargo opportunity made me open actually a new company called LunaJets that I am now going to expand and scale to be a full-blown business unit. With a profit center, and taking advantage of the LunaJets database and the LunaJets image, which, if it was a brand new company, would not be able to benefit from that. So yes, it was good times, fun times, exciting times. I know my team as well. They really liked it. We had some nights that we had to sleep over because we had to organize flights in China. So I had people sleeping in the office and staying awake all night, but it worked out well.
Interesting times. And on the business traveler front, what is your view on that? Do you think they're going to come back, or you a few less, or you're quite worried that maybe business travelers don't travel nearly as much as they used to?
What we've seen, so also what allowed us to survive, even on the private jet, is that our business is very well spread. So we're about 50-50 between personal private flights and corporate flights. And geography-wise, we're all over. Our clients are all over Europe, from the UK, Benelux, Germany, France, Switzerland, Italy, Spain. I have about 80% of my target, and the rest is outside. So it was a good spread, which meant that even when some countries were in complete lockdown, I had other clients being able to fly, and Russians as well. So that worked well. Corporate clients, what we've seen is that it's we've seen both sides. We've seen some companies that said, okay, now we're going to do everything online and on Zoom or video calls, and others, and that happened for the first 2-3 months. But then people said, well, we still need to go and visit those factories and visit those companies we want to merge and take over, and those agencies around the world. So and executives then also started deciding that it was not very safe flying commercial, and the companies were paying for private jets for them. So on the one hand, they're flying less because they can use technology to hold their meetings, but on the other hand, the few flights that they do have to do end up with private jets just because of safety and safety concerns. So it's a mix. We are confident they will still be there. It's not going to be. It's going to be a more fragmented. So there won't be one company flying a lot. It will be more fragmented, and the charter market is ideal again for them, rather than fixed fractional programs with fractional companies and cards. Being that flexibility of having any plane, anytime, anywhere works very well with them.
That's great. Maybe we could make the ending statement about the growth and also your future, both personally and of Luna. I guess I was curious if you had ever considered entering the U.S. markets or the Asian markets. Obviously, you mentioned those are the other big areas. So do you have any plans to go after that, and what are your thoughts on doing so?
So yeah, the U.S. market is the biggest in the world, but it's very fragmented and very mature. So the companies that have launched there, that I mentioned, the Smart Jets and the Strata Jets and the Victors and the Black Jets, they haven't succeeded. It's a very difficult market. We are leaders in Europe, so that's very good. But my vision is more towards the East. So I think the Asian market is not quite ready for the added value that a broker like us can add. You need a certain mass volume of flights and a critical mass of aircraft in the market to substantiate the need for a broker to do all the job and to do the service for you. So we're not quite there. It was doing very well before COVID. There's probably been a slowdown now, but we're looking very closely at that market, and we'll jump on it as soon as an opportunity arises. The midterm objective is more the Middle East. They are high consumers of private jets. It's used to the product. Like it very much. The market is not. It still has opportunities. So that's where geographically our next scaling would be. I would say.
Oh, that's great. I guess the last question was just about you personally. I think you're in your late 40s or so. I understand you're a passionate triathlete. I think you and your kids ski, and I was curious just sort of how what your personal long-term goals, including Luna, and obviously aside, and your ambitions for the coming decades are?
Well, thank you for the compliment. I'm actually in my early 50s.
Early 50s.
But yes, it's so ambitions and goals, and really to I've been growing this company for 13 years. Hopefully I can do it for another 13, but I know I'm over the 50s, so I won't be able to grow it for another 30 years. So I also have in mind, if you want, the next step, the handover. And given that my team is young, and that's how we wanted, and we like them, it's true that I'm paying more and more attention to fostering the key employees and making them grow in the company so that one day they can take over. Even with the growth that we plan, I won't be able to multitask as much as I've done since the beginning, and to do everything that I do. So I really need help, and you really need people to help me. And in preparing this, this is a long-term goal, but you have to do it now, because I think that the best way for the handover will be to keep it internal and not to have somebody else come over. So it's about growing the business, taking care and thinking about who will be able to help me as we grow up and up in the company. It's, of course, staying healthy is key. If you're not healthy, then you're not going to be able to manage anything, family or business. So triathlon is a very good sport. It's very dynamic. It's very multitasking as well. There's 3 sports into one, and for me, it's very important. And I train every day to have this energy to keep up with the people here in the company. And so far, it's worked well. And we'll see where the next 10 years take us. But pretty confident. As long as the market continues, and we're very reliant on the stock market and the macroeconomics. That's the biggest danger to private aviation is the stock market, as we saw in the 2008 crisis. So as long as that continues, the company should grow. And if there's bumps along the road, we've proven that we can adapt and come out stronger and more profitable. So we're pretty cash rich as well. So we have cash to spend if we see opportunities ahead of us, if we want to expand or take over another company. I'm in a great position, no complaints, and looking forward to the future.
Multitasking in athletics and business at the same time. Thanks, Eymeric. That was terrific. We really appreciate taking the time to join us today. This is presented by Van Chap Capital, LLC, for informational purposes only. The future-looking statements and opinions expressed herein do not necessarily represent Van Chap's views and opinions, and may over time be proven inaccurate. Van Chap may or may not manage securities positions of the issuers discussed in this presentation. Nothing herein constitutes an offer to sell or a solicitation for an offer to buy any security. Van Chap does not guarantee the accuracy of the information provided herein, and this presentation should not be the basis of any investment decision.